Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. You might have forgot about me because I was off on Thursday and Friday. We had a great time at that TPC Sawgrass. I will tell you, it was phenomenal, even with all the bad weather and the wind and the rain. But it really made for some really interesting golf for sure. And it looked a little bit like what we've been seeing in the markets, quite honestly. Some of the golfers had some really great days. Some did not. Some had really awful days, a lot like the market, what's been moving around. So the ride continues. Velocity, yes. Volatility, yes. The volumes that we are seeing, absolutely. We just continue to have the three V's all being a big participant in what's going on. We started off the day with the Dow at the highs of the day. 500 points or so later, we finished the day and we were down about 0.7% or nearly 230 points. Now the NASDAQ really got whacked. It actually, even though it opened at the day's highs, the NASDAQ continued to push to the downside as well. By the end of the day, actually finishing down about almost 300 points, a little over 2%, 2.2% to the downside. So getting a really pretty good hit there. Also looking at a lot of the commodities trade getting hit today. That still continues. But back on Friday, we did see the commodities, particularly crude oil. That's the one that everybody's been focused on most. But don't forget, there's gold, there's nickel, there's copper, there's silver. There's a lot of different things out there in the commodity space. Wheat, corn, you name it. So all of those had that big run to the upside. You take a look at what's been going on with crude, though, because that one is front and center. Crude got all the way up to 130 for WTI. 130, then we were 125, then we pulled back to 120, we pulled back to 110. We actually closed a little bit closer to call it 109 on Friday, still getting beat up today. We look at the price of gold. Gold also, now we've had a lot of paper in there. We've seen some GLD, some GDX, we've seen some individual names. They have been very, very good trades, but again, trades, some of them April, some May, March. We also saw some option activity going all the way out to September. So we've seen it all across the gold space, but those had already had a really nice move going into last week. But we are seeing continual pullbacks now, day after day after day, after some of those hit either one-year highs, multi-year highs. Take a look at copper. We talk about how high that hit. A lot of different areas within the commodity space that was hitting new highs in whatever kind of a time frame you want to put that at. And that was part of what we were watching and seeing a little bit of that pullback now. Now you're seeing a relatively significant pullback when you look at what's going on today, specifically in crude. But it was that really rapid run. Now, a lot of that happened long before Ukraine, long before Russia. A lot of that movement towards that 100 level, it was that, call it 100 up to 120, 130. That was the area that I think a lot of that was really based on what we were seeing going on over there as well, just adding to what's been going on over the last 16, 18 months. So early on, when you look at every sector closing in the red, that's definitely not a great sign. We had volatility actually dip back down. A lot of people will say to me, well, Pete, why is volatility going down with the markets going down? You got to always remember, everybody loves to call it the fear index. That's not really giving you a fair shake at what it really is. It's the movements that we are measuring in the markets of the S&P 500. That is the VIX. You've also got the VXX for the shorter term. But when you look at the VIX and we talk about 32, you are saying a 2% move every single day for the S&P. Now, we weren't really we've slowed off of that a little bit. The intraday's been incredible, but we've slowed off of that kind of movement at the end of the day. So just always keep that in mind as you're looking at volatility and all the rest of it. Finished just underneath 31 on Friday, 40 million contracts. Again, technology, really the leadership getting hit to the downside. Consumer discretionary, also nearly a 2% move to the downside. Energy getting hit. Of course, we talk about some of that movement there. Then we look over at the financials. The financials, even with a little bit of movement to the upside out of the 10-year, financials having a hard time. So where were some of the strength within the market? Well, you look at healthcare. Pfizer, Regeneron really had great days. Deere, we look at McDonald's, we look at Caterpillar. Those are some of the names that were kind of moving to the upside, but they just could not keep up with all the pressure we were seeing from the casinos, whether it's Wynn, Las Vegas Sands, Starbucks, Tesla. Tesla was down 5%. How about DocuSign, down 20% as the poster child of those high PE, no PE names that had really run. And yes, they've come back significantly, but that's not how you value stocks by, oh, it's 50% off of the high, so that means it's a buy because it's gotten cheap. That is not the way this works, folks. And they continually have that on television. Well, off 60%, it's probably getting interesting here, 70%. But what if these names still don't make money? There's still a lot of process that you've got to go through there. DocuSign, great company, will be with us for the future, but doesn't mean necessarily that's an inexpensive stock. That was proven by what we had seen yet on Friday with that 20% down move. Chinese names also under pressure. Take a look at PDD, JD, Baidu. You look at all of these names. They've been under pressure. They're even under more pressure today. Nike, another one of those names. So as we get into today, the talks of Russia, Ukraine, giving a little bit of positivity to the market. A lot of people starting to say, well, maybe something can be hammered out. Maybe they can reach some form of an agreement. We'll see on that. But the markets certainly were reacting to that. So early on in the pre-market, Dow up close to 200 points. NASDAQ really not following along very nicely. It was actually still in negative territory. It really dropped very early in the session from kind of flat to red, down about 70 or 100 points to the downside fairly early on in trade. That's actually been bought back and moved back up. And a lot of that is within the semiconductor space. Technology really not bouncing a whole heck of a lot. Matter of fact, Apple with a little bit of pressure on it today. But when you look across the field and all of the different sectors that are out there, you can understand why we are now looking at a market that's up 300 points on the Dow. We've gotten back into positive territory, but the NASDAQ really isn't moving a whole lot. It's up 15, 20 points last I looked before I came on, but not a lot of movement to the upside for any of the anything close to what comparable what we're seeing in the Dow right now. Financials started off the day strong, continue to be strong, up well over 2% so far today. Healthcare, another one, started off pretty strong, continues to be strong, up about 1.4%, maybe 1.5%. I look over at technology. It was flat. It got into positive territory. Semiconductors were down about 0.75%. They've gotten all the way back to flat, maybe even a little bit of green early on. I look at energy, down and continues to be down well over 3%, call it 3.6% to the downside for energy early on. We talked about crude under a little bit more pressure, finished at 109. Today, we're looking at crude anywhere between 100 and just a little bit over 100, maybe 101 or so. So a lot of different movements that we are seeing within the markets early on. Where are we seeing some strength early on? I talked about healthcare. Moderna, one of those names that stands out. That's up about 14%. But that's also a name that had been crushed for a variety of reasons, not valuations, but for a variety of reasons. We had seen that name just come tumbling down, having a decent day today. Every day is a little bit different for some of these specific names, and Moderna being one of those names. It's a darling one day, and then it's getting hit the next day. So it's been all over the map. Now, eBay also up today, Pepsi up today, Monster Beverage up, Coke up, going up. You see that? There's a little bit of a trend going on right now when you see that, maybe some of the staples and so forth. So J&J participating with healthcare, along with United Health. Then I look over at the financials, talk about the financials moving up pretty nicely. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. And by the way, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, way outpacing the other names right out to the upside. There's a lot of different stories behind why that is. Beta energy getting absolutely slammed. We talk about this all the time. It is not just in the upward direction that you get that great beta. When it's beta, that means it's going to move up or down significantly and extremely fast. It's exactly what we're seeing today with names like Devon, Oxy, Apache, Marathon Oil, all those names under pressure today. Those casinos, again, getting hit. I'm talking about Las Vegas Sands getting hit pretty good once again. A pandemic potentially of what's been going on with a little bit of elevation there in China. That is a problem. There's no doubt about it. Speaking of China, the Chinese names really under pressure, a lot of pressure. When you look at PDD, Baidu, JD, across the board, you can see NetEase, all these names getting hit to the downside. But we've also got Starbucks, obviously a lot of the revenue coming from China. You got Marvell, you've got Micron. Those are the names that at least early on, as far as the semiconductors, they were under pressure early on. So there's just a lot of different back and forth. You can see the huge discrepancy today between the NASDAQ and what's going on with the Dow. Absolutely night and day. Financials, a big part of that for the Dow, and pulling on the other side, it was actually the semiconductors, but as I say, starting to get a little bit better. Got two unusuals we're down here. So first one, Pfizer. Very interesting to see this one. We don't see this very often on unusual, but we do see it occasionally. Stock was trading a little bit over 51, call it 51.15 or so. We had a buyer of 7,200, very short term. These are the March 53 calls, getting a pretty nice bid there, 25 cents, 7,200 of those. That's a nice to see very early on that hit. On top of that one, we've got one that we very rarely talk about. I think I've talked about on television a couple of times for the halftime report, but Coupang. Now, this is a South Korean e-commerce play. And this one's pretty interesting, trading at 1660 at the time of the trade, 2,900 of the March 17 calls getting bought, 56 cents up to a little over 80 cents for those calls. Not a gigantic trade, but it did stand out because we've seen some trading in the past in Coupang, and it's made a really nice move rapidly from those options that have been purchased. We'll see if that follows along today as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. Be safe, be smart, understand the markets, volatility. The key to volatility is, are we getting that kind of movement or are we not? And when we are not, we start to see that volatility start to drop back down. Last I looked, we were around 30. Range so far today, 30 to 32. That's about right. It probably should start to break underneath 30 if we continue to have a little bit of movement back from the NASDAQ itself. So we'll see how that plays out. Have a great day of trading.